Hello and welcome to the Grit Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. This is your host, Bryce Moose, otherwise known as the Commissioner and the only two-timer. Joining me today is a new co-host, stepping in for Jacob Kaplan. Let me introduce everyone to our friend, Mr. Austin Rains. Austin, how we doing?
Yep, I'm doing pretty well tonight. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me on. Thanks to Jacob Kaplan for taking care of his fatherly and familial responsibilities, so I could step in and I don't know, maybe give some wisdom here to Blake. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I have no championships, no rings, no two timer. I'm just here, just a man of the people. So
The people have been dying to hear from you.
yeah,
You're a voice that everyone listens to and respects, and I think the rest of the league will love hearing your take on our feature team today, Lottie's lottery picks.
yeah.
Uh,
I think they'll listen. I don't know if they'll respect, but that's okay.
well, it creates conversation either way. All right.
That's fine.
So getting into it today, we're going to be breaking down Blake's team. So Blake last year had a 4-10 record, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. I believe he started 2-2, and then the wheels kind of fell off. The one thing we can all say about Blake is this man's involved in about every trade, loves getting stuff done. The biggest question I have is, are the deals always worth it? A lot of sideways looking trades, a lot of stuff that seems to hint at one direction, and then he does something 2 days later that hints at the other. Blake has improved his roster and looks like he has a team here that can win some games, but is it enough to compete? Austin, any overall takes on Blake before we get into this?
Yeah, I don't have too much. So here are my notes for today, and here are the notes going away because whatever I write down, whatever I say right now, Blake's roster is going to look potentially totally different in 24 hours. Like there is nothing we can say or do right now, or game plan or assess that could get to Blake because truly you have no idea what his roster is going to look like. What are we, a week and a half out from kickoff?
About 10
And
days,
we
yeah.
have no idea. Yeah, so we have no idea what it's going to look like. That's exciting. I think everyone knows how I operate. I don't think I could do that, but more power to Blake. It makes the league interesting.
His lack of player loyalty has really shown its
Yeah,
cards here. After making moves for players like Devonte Adams, for George Pickens, he has since traded those guys away. And I don't really know if his team has really improved all that much. Now, what I will say is his willingness to make deals always, gets people coming to him wanting to make something happen. It's definitely good if you want to make
absolutely.
moves. If you're somebody who's easy to work with, people want to come back and trade with you again. So that is definitely the best thing I could say about Blake's trading strategies. But with that said, one position that hasn't changed in about 12 months here is his quarterback position. Leading the
Yeah.
way here would be QB3, Mr. Josh Allen. Josh is only behind Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts as it stands today. The Bills have had a great team the last couple of years. Hasn't been quite enough to get to a Super Bowl, but Josh has been able to get fantasy stats every single game. Been a consistent player over the years and always has that monster upside for QB1 type of weeks. As we head into 2023, the Bills' offense looks slightly different with James Cook as the starting running back, as well as Khalil Shakir and Deontay Hardy really manning that slot position. But the Allen to Diggs connection, as well as the addition of Dalton Kincaid, who I should throw in there as well,
Yeah.
is it enough to push this offense forward? How are you feeling about Josh Allen?
Um, from a fantasy perspective, I feel really good. I think he's like top five proof. Like, I don't think there is any world where he plays 17 games, right, and isn't a top five fantasy quarterback this year. I just don't think it happens. So, with that being said, like, and let's go back, right? It's not for a lack of trying that Blake hasn't moved Josh Allen. He has tried. I just don't think he's landed on the offer he's
Yeah.
wanted yet. He's tried with me. I know personally, so I know he's tried with other people too. But Josh Allen's awesome. He's a great player. He's got some familiar faces back. He's got some new weapons in there. I think the Bills are going to be I think they're going to win their division, and I think they're going to, probably be a top four team in the NFL. I don't know, like, if we're looking at the team itself, are they a Super Bowl contender? Yes, but I don't know if they're going to do it. But from a fantasy point, like, I think he's still top five quarterback without question. So
Yeah, and as these pieces around him have started to move a little bit, Gabe Davis is still there. Gabe Davis had a really unproductive season last year.
right,
A lot of the additional metrics and advanced stuff that people look at, Gabe Davis was one of the worst receivers in the entire NFL that played, 80% of snaps or higher. I don't know if it really matters because what he's kind of used for is being a big body touchdown threat. How Josh Allen plays, occasionally that kind of play is open. We've seen Gabe Davis with those 85, 90-yard touchdowns over the past couple seasons. Doesn't really surprise me too much. The addition of Dalton Kincaid, I think, is really interesting for Josh for like a red zone point of view, red zone
yep,
touchdown passes. The Bills have really struggled rushing with running backs over the past couple seasons, which that's great for Josh Allen in the red zone and stuff like that. And this year they didn't really do anything to upgrade that. James Cook does not profile as a red zone back. They brought in Damian Harris, who's missed all the camp with an injury. I think Josh has got just the same upside as he's had the last couple seasons, if not more.
yep.
The big question for him is just, can he stay healthy? Obviously, somebody who takes a ton of huge hits, but as far as Blake goes, I think having Josh Allen would make anybody in this league happy, and I'm not too concerned about him at all. I think he's definitely got the top three, top two upside this year.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, we could fast forward here in 5 months, and if Josh Allen is QB1, I don't think anyone is surprised, right? I still think, he does take a lot of hits, right? He puts himself in harm's way quite a bit. He is like the red zone guy. James Cook is not that player. Damian Harris surely is not that player, right? So yeah, I totally agree there.
Yeah, and then behind Josh Allen, Blake does have probably one of the better backup QB situations in the entire Grit League with Kirk Cousins sitting
Yeah,
here. Kirk Cousins is another year older and he's getting to the end of his contract. But as far as weapons go, I know as the owner of Justin Jefferson, you've seen Kirk play a ton. Always been a fantasy monster. Always top five in touchdown passes for the last, I believe, 3 or 4 years at this point. Just doesn't have the rushing upside, but having him for a backup QB is more than enough to feel great about. So Blake definitely has something good there.
yeah. Kirk is a stud. I mean, every time I look at his age, I get a little surprised. Like, I looked today because I was honestly trying to trade for him. He's 35. Like,
Yep.
how many productive quarterbacks have we seen over the age of 35? I mean, not too many. Obviously, the trend is older, later quarterbacks are now becoming more popular and honestly better. But is Kirk Cousins that guy? I don't know, but he's still this year an absolutely great backup option with a team that once again is competing for the division, tons of weapons. I see no red flags, no beige flags at all with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and usually the trend is when you get 35 or older at quarterback, you're usually a Hall of Famer. So I don't know if
Yeah,
Kirk is that, but he is still productive. His arm strength hasn't gotten any worse by my accounts or anything like that. They add Jordan Addison.
no,
I think the Vikings are going to be a pretty good team once again, and that defense doesn't look great. So Kirk's probably going to be throwing the ball a lot this year. Um, look, I don't know if Blake's going to keep Kirk Cousins this entire season. I definitely could see him being somebody who is traded. If one of these top quarterbacks go down, I think Kirk Cousins is like the perfect guy to try to get if you're a team that's trying to win. So like say Jalen Hurts goes down in your Zach, I think getting like a Kirk Cousins would make a lot of sense just because he's going to be a consistent top 12 to 15 finisher and he always has that top 5 weekly upside.
yeah, and he doesn't miss games, right? Like, he is always out there. He's always playing. He's consistent. Yeah, he doesn't take a lot of big hits, and he's thanks to Garrett, but he's always out there. He's always playing, and I think he's a great backup option. And I think he will probably be sold during the season. Now that's barring Josh Allen not getting hurt, but I know Blake is trying to get a second or a third for him, and I think that's very possible if a team has their back against the wall. So
Yeah, I think a second rounder for Kirk Cousins feels aggressive as we sit here today, but if you're desperate, that's a price in season. I think you're just willing to pay just to like kind of lock that thing down. As far as quarterbacks go, it's a one QB league, and so Blake sits here third out of 12 teams. I think he's got this position pretty much locked down for the next couple of years. I don't think I'd be rushing to make a move if I am Blake. Probably just stand pat here and then make some moves with the rest of your roster. Because I listen, if I try to tell Blake don't do a trade, he's going to do two tomorrow. So Move,
Yes, 100%.
yeah, and speaking of moves, we probably can lead the way here at running back, talking about his newest addition, Mr. Javonte Williams.
Yeah,
Javonte Williams is somebody who tore his Achilles back in 2022. Um, has missed, I believe, 17 games out of his first possible 34. Um, the one good thing I'll say about him is he was drafted just after he turned 21. So even entering year three, he's still only 23 years old. Um, as far as Javonte and the Broncos go, a lot of people have higher expectations for the Broncos this year as a team. I'm not sure I see it. I'm not sure I see it with Javonte. I think the fantasy community is way too high on him in general. Um, any opinions there, Austin?
no, I want to hear your opinions. Where, like, if this was a, just a like a redraft league, where are you taking Javante?
Um, he's like above James Cook.
Yeah.
He's probably in the Damian Pierce tier,
Okay.
where so before I say anything else, I should say I totally understand the upside case for Javonte Williams. Look, they don't really have a great RB2. Samaje Perine there, but how many 30-year-old handcuff running backs matter in the NFL? Not many.
Yeah.
They drafted Javonte to be the guy. He looked great as a rookie. I think he caught 50 something passes as a rookie. Kind of showed he could do it all. It's just the
Hmm.
injuries have kind of let him down to this point, but people saw the upside for sure. Now, usually running backs when coming off the Achilles tear are just never the same, but we haven't really seen it on a big sample size from somebody who's as young as he was. So, tearing your Achilles at 22 years old, how does that affect your entire career? I'm not totally sure, but the Broncos have dealt with some other injuries, like Jerry Jeudy is out this year, or not out this year, but he's probably going to miss another month and a half at this point. Cortland Sutton has been a shell of himself since 2019. Russ is
Yeah.
36 years old.
Tim Patrick.
Yeah, this division in general, like the Chargers and Chiefs, are four games that you're probably penciling in as losses. You hope you could go 1-3 in those games, and then the Raiders, who for all of their dysfunction, still have a lot of talent all over the field. So,
Sure.
um, I don't know. Like Javonte Williams is somebody I just don't feel great about. I feel like he's just so overvalued in terms of like what we expect from him in a dynasty perspective. RB 15 overall for somebody who hasn't played a game in more than 12 months. Like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds pretty aggressive. Now, people see the age, people have seen the production, but there's just too many question marks for me. I don't like. I don't, I don't think I'd want him on my team. Like that might sound crazy, but like there's just too much of a gamble there for me at running back. An Achilles injury is just it's different, right? You don't see guys bounce back as easily as that one as the ACL has turned out to be. So I don't know, Javante. Like obviously, like you said, he can do it all when he's healthy, and I think he is capable of getting back to that. But like we just have no idea, right? Now, granted, he's supposedly healed up pretty well, and I'm rooting for him. He's a UNC
Yeah.
Tar Heel. I want him to. I want him to succeed. I think the opportunity's there if he's healthy. So he's just one of those guys where it's like this may not sound super analytical, but it's just like let's wait and see. I guess we're gonna like that's the only way we can do this because everyone can throw darts at a board all day long, but until he starts playing football games, we really don't have any idea.
Yeah, and I think as far as this season goes, like it sounds like the Broncos want to run this committee with like him and Samaje Perine getting probably something like a 60-40 split. Now,
Yeah.
Samaje Perine is a good pass catcher for being as big as he is, and like he's not a great
And he
athlete, but
looked good in their past preseason game, too.
he did, and he was great last year for the Bengals. Look, like as far as Javonte Williams' ceiling goes this year, I honestly think it takes like Samaje Perine getting hurt for you to see any kind of ceiling, because if not, you might be looking at somewhere like 13 to 16 touches a game. Now, of course, like
Yeah.
if he's healthy, like of course, like yes, he could pull the Kamara. Like we saw Alvin Kamara do this for 4 seasons where he touches it 15 times, still has 27 fantasy points. Could Javonte do that? Sure. He profiles somewhat similarly. Russ loves to check down for backs. And then they need all the talent they can get after some of these injuries. So I definitely can see it working out, but this is like just a player in general that it's such a gamble because, I mean, my goodness, like would it shock anybody if Javonte got hurt again or if he's just not what we remember as we head into the season?
Yeah.
I don't know. it's a risk that I don't think Blake needed to take given the rest of his roster, if that makes sense.
And this isn't targeted to Javonte Williams. He is just kind of unfortunately falls under this umbrella. And we are in a time in the NFL where running backs are just so disposable, right? Like, and he is just one of those guys you could be like, oh man, you remember Javonte Williams? Like, he had a great rookie year. Like, what happened to him? And he's just like, I don't know. He got hurt, Achilles injury, never really bounced back. I could just see him being one of those guys where he was not a first round. He was not a first round guy. He was like a late second, I'm pretty sure. And like with that, he just doesn't have like. I mean, that's a good pedigree, but not like elite level where it's just like you can kind of be disposed with that. You know, it's so could be something to watch.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll note on Javonte before we move on. Remember, this guy had 1,200 total yards and 12 touchdowns as a rookie, which is like pretty impressive. Like something that's like very rare to see done. The other side of that coin is he has split backfields. He's been in a split backfield since high school. I mean, this guy played with Michael Carter for 3 years at UNC, played with Melvin Gordon as a rookie with the Broncos, got hurt start of the season last year, and then now it's going to be Samaje Perine. So can he continue to be productive in a limited role? Absolutely. Does he have the fantasy ceiling to be that kind of, again, RB 16 overall? I'm struggling there, but if it works,
I'll play devil's advocate really quickly. I do like. I think there's a world where we're like, okay, you know, like we were wrong, right? Like where he is getting like, you know, 75% of the touches out of the backfield. He has 60 catches this season or something ridiculous like that, and he ends up like, I'm not saying league winner value, but like he ends up being like a guy that is a true cut RB1 this year just because he's bounced back from this injury. And I don't know, people might be sleeping on him a little bit, but I don't know. I fall more like if it were, you know, there were a gun to my head, I'd fall more in the category that you do, right? Where it's like, I think this injury is going to take a lot longer to recover from than we're giving him credit for. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm cheering for him in general, but I feel like we're valuing him at his ceiling right now. It could change. I could have a different opinion if he comes out and looks great the first couple weeks. But again, as I stand here today, just somebody I think is like kind of just very overvalued. I think that's kind of why Jonah wanted to move him in general.
Makes sense.
DeAndre Swift is another one of these guys in this, you know, it's a new situation. It ended poorly in Detroit. We've all seen the clips on Twitter of him looking like an idiot running the football. New opportunity now for a Super Bowl team, and the backfield is very much up for grabs. I won't say it's his backfield altogether, just given some of the Kenny Gainwell stuff that we have seen. Rashad Penny is also there, and then, of course, Jalen Hurts will run himself. But Swift's going to have an opportunity here. Quickly to recap on Swift, last year, the last 2 seasons, he has had 62 and 58 catches. He profiles as the prototypical throw-to running back kind of guy, great in space, great at making people miss. The problem is, through 3 NFL seasons, DeAndre Swift has never had 650 rushing yards in a season. That's the kind of staggering stuff that when you look at it from just a macro level, I don't really know where to value him in general. It's why the fantasy community is very torn on him, even being with the Eagles. Now, I think he's going to have some monster games, and we do see this every single season where DeAndre Swift has that 35-point fantasy week and he wins somebody, their respective week. Could he do it in the fantasy playoffs this year? Very possible. But one of these guys that I think Blake also kind of considered this. We've seen him make a ton of running back trades over the past couple of days. I don't think he felt great with DeAndre Swift being his like number one guy, and I do like that he's added some more bodies around him.
Yeah. James Conner's the one that comes to top of mind, who I think is going to have a really solid season just because there is no one else around him to touch the ball. But going back to Swift, I like from a talent perspective am probably a little bit higher on Swift than like most people, including you, are. I think he's like a very solid like running back, maybe fitting more into the flex option. But like I think if he finds the right situation, then I think he can be really a viable option. The pass catching obviously is huge, right? What is it, 55 over his first 2 seasons at minimum? I think he's there. Now, what I'm a little more worried about is like why, and I don't think this question, it just got like thrown under the rug, right? Like, why was Detroit so adamant on moving this guy? Like, is he just the biggest locker room cancer of all time? Like, he's a young kid who is solid, right? Like, why were they so quick to move him, and then go out and draft the next version of him?
I thought that whole situation was really weird as well. Moving on from Swift, I think it made some sense to them if they basically said, hey, we're not going to give him a contract. Jamal Williams was very capable as a goal line back, but Detroit then moves on from both of them and then drafts a running back. So are you saying Jameer Gibbs
Yeah,
is like if the two of them combined, they'd sign David Montgomery? Like they just wanted to change scenery. I'm not really, I don't really have a great answer for kind of what they were thinking. Now, as far as
no, I
DeAndre
don't think
Swift,
anyone does.
as far as DeAndre Swift around the goal line goes, there's tons of these clips I've seen that he just runs sideways, gets pushed out of bounds, so many unproductive runs, and Jamal Williams was just really good at it. So it really capped his upside. I think the Lions realized that we don't really need this guy. But man, they really like rushed to get him out of the building. And I'm with you. Like with the ball in space, DeAndre Swift is like a special player. Um,
Very.
this is the kind of fit though that I'm excited for him because this is one of these like I really want to see him do it with the Eagles. Um, he's going to have plenty of chances, I think, to have some of these special moments and highlight plays. If Blake can time it up with the right time to start him, maybe he ices Kenny Gainwell and he gets even 12 carries a game would be huge for him, given what he can do as a receiver. Um,
Yeah.
he's definitely somebody with a huge upside and somebody we could definitely be feeling better about as we get into the season.
I, yeah. So, like you said, Detroit shipped him off without any second thoughts, any doubts. They were like, "We're doing this." So once again, locker room questions. I don't know what that's about. None of us do, but I just wanted to note that. Um, and then I'm like, okay, yes, like he's going to the Eagles. This seems like the perfect scenario, right? Where it's like he is going to get, he's going to be the guy. He's going to get all the touches. 12 carries a game. You know, tie that in with what 5 receptions a game. It's going to be a dream scenario. And then we get all these Twitter updates, and it's like Kenny Gainwell is getting all of the love in training camp.
Yeah.
He's getting all these touches, and it's like, okay, what is going on with this guy? Like, is he just the biggest cancer that like we're already giving it to Kenny Gainwell, who we've seen play before? But yeah, the goal line stuff scares me. The inconsistent touches, the numbers, that it all scares me. But like at the same time, like we see him in open space, we see it work, we see his pass catching ability. Like I think if you compare it all together, he can be a really special guy. It's just once again, it's kind of like Javonte. It's like these two top running backs are such huge question marks to me, that they kind of scare me. And obviously, I'm kind of a coward in like fantasy, where it's like I'm afraid to make that move, right? So like rostering these two guys would scare the shit out of me, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we talk a lot about contingency value a lot and like, what happens if somebody else gets hurt, like who steps up in that mold. I kind of think it's the reverse with DeAndre Swift. Like he has a chance if injuries break his way to like be a league winner in fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
If,
Yeah,
say Gainwell's just maybe not doing so great, Rashad Penny's been hurt every year of his career. Like if these guys are just not doing it and DeAndre Swift gets all of the backfield work for the Eagles, I mean, look out because that's like RB top 5 RB season potentially. Um, I like what Blake has done though, is he's kind of made DeAndre Swift a flex option with some of these trades. And I feel so much better about that than like feeling like I have to start him every single game.
yeah, absolutely. But it is interesting. Like the Eagles were not running to re-sign Miles Sanders, right? So
Yep.
they pick up Swift. Are they wanting him to take on that role of what did he have 1,210 plus touchdowns last year? So
Yeah.
like it is a crowded offense, right? Like there's so many pieces, so many mouths to feed, but like the need is there. It's just I'm now worried about Kenneth Gainwell, and I don't. It's just it's a little scary. But like you said, yes, Blake has got no shortage of RB options right now. So like if Swift flops, it doesn't really affect him too much, right? Like
Yeah.
especially with the move he made today.
Yeah. And last thing with Swift before we move on, I also think there's a chance we get into like week 3, week 4, and we're like, you remember when the Eagles were talking up Kenny Gainwell and this guy's got like 5 carries in 4 games?
Yeah, 100%.
he's just not somebody I've ever been like very concerned about from a fantasy perspective. We haven't gotten to Miles Sanders on Jacob's team review yet, but I think a lot of people would be surprised if you really look at Miles Sanders' stats. He's way better of a runner than people give him credit for, and he's way worse of a pass catcher than people think he is. This guy had 27 targets for the Eagles last year. Targets. Like
Yeah.
he's not a pass catcher. I think they went and got Swift because they know he can do it. I mean, this is a guy who's caught 50 balls every year of his career. If you get Jalen Hurts out in space throwing to running backs, I think you could see some pretty special plays happen.
Right. And they have Jalen Hurts, who is arguably one of the best goal line backs in the league. They don't need Swift to be that guy, right?
Yep.
They went out and got Swift for a reason. And I think he fits the offense really, really well, as long as like there's no locker room issues and as long as he's not getting Wally pipped by Kenneth Gainwell. So
Right.
I think it really could be a great season if those couple things don't happen.
Yeah, and then a team whose season we have no idea what to expect because of all of the moving parts and owners facing legal allegations would be the Washington Commanders. Now,
Oof.
after having Brian Robinson kind of on his lonesome for the past season, I made the trade with Blake to get him the other side of this backfield in Antonio Gibson. So we probably should just start there with Blake owning both of these guys. Last year, we saw a true 50-50 committee. Both played about the exact same snaps, both had about the exact same touches. It sounds like in camp that Antonio Gibson has kind of taken on the 1A role, but Brian Robinson's still
Mm-hmm.
going to be involved. He's definitely a better goal line kind of back. Antonio Gibson's a better receiver. I don't know what to expect from the Commanders because how could I? Like Sam Howell has played 3 quarters in the NFL, who's a 5th-round pick, and now he's just given the starting job. Now I'm happy for him because I have him, but like this is something that this could be really good, really terrible, or somewhere in between.
Uh, yes. I think it's going to be something terrible, honestly. Like, unless Sam Howell like turns heads, I just don't see this really working out. Now, hopefully, the beneficiaries of that are those two running backs, right? Well, so like when in doubt, let's just run it with two guys that are pretty proven at this point that like
Yeah.
can be consistent guys in the league. Um, I don't want to like this might sound counterproductive, but like honestly, don't want to spend too much time on these guys because I think both of them are trade pawns to Blake. Like I don't think they are going to be on his roster. Probably either of them, maybe one of them will, but like if both of them are on his roster in 10 days, like I don't even know what I'll do, but I'll be very surprised.
Yeah, and speaking from experience here, Antonio Gibson was a really hard player to trade just because everyone knows like, yeah, he's a 50-50 back. Um,
Yeah.
the interesting side of this is Blake could go to somebody and package, say, hey, I'll give you the whole Commanders backfield. I'll trade you both Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson for something. Because I think that's actually a trade that's kind of interesting because that person doesn't have to worry if like one of these guys gets hurt. It's like, oh shoot, here's the other one. Um,
Yeah.
if you have a game you expect the Commanders to lose, you play Antonio Gibson. Have a game you expect the Commanders to win, you play Brian Robinson. I think it's about that simple. But yeah, we don't have to spend too much time on them. The last thing I'll say, both of these guys were the bottom 6 in yards per carry for running backs for
Yeah.
guys who saw over 100 carries last season. Not
It's
great.
a damning stat. It's not great.
It,
So I'll ask this. Would you roster both of them?
yeah, yeah, because how bad the Washington's quarterback situation has been. Like, if Sam Howell is better than we think, right? We like their weapons. Like, we like Terry McLaurin, we like Jahan Dotson. This rookie tight or the 2nd-year tight end Cole Turner seems to be turning heads in camp. A lot of buzz on him.
Yeah.
Diami Brown is still there. Curtis Samuel is still there. I mean, they have guys who can, score touchdowns and make exciting plays. Other side of this too is the defense is still kind of top 5 in the league. They were number 1 against the run last year. The pass defense looks great. They drafted Emmanuel Forbes in the 1st round, another corner. Um, I think this is one of the best defenses in the NFL. And if you get the Commanders kind of playing with a lead, like I think Brian Robinson's like a really good player to own. Definitely somebody who's a flex option. And then Antonio Gibson. Listen, if they play the Eagles, they play the Cowboys, a team that's just going to sit back and like let Sam Howell dink and dunk. Well, Antonio Gibson could catch 7 balls.
Sure.
Um, if Blake came to me with that trade and I was a contender, I would kind of be interested because like the biggest thing with owning running backs is if the guy gets hurt, you're like holding your breath every single time your guy gets tackled because like, listen, if he gets hurt, then I'm done. You hope he's not out for
Mm-hmm.
too long. But if guys miss multiple games, right? Like if you own Jonathan Taylor and you don't have his backups and he misses a month, well, I'm just kind of screwed. But at least this way, it's like you would always have the other one. So you're getting one or two for the price of one really good one, maybe. Like I don't know what that
Yeah.
trade package looks like, but I do think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I think, you know, everyone loves insurance, especially in dynasties. So it is cool to have both of them. I see them as such like, just so close to equal almost, which rarely happens, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting backfield altogether. I'm a little worried, like I said, about the team itself. Like I do think they're like they have potential, right? Like they have that top five defense. If Sam Howell does anything, there are weapons on the offense.
Yeah.
Like so, there's potential there. I do think they're in like the second, maybe third hardest division in football, which also scares me a little bit. So I just don't know what to make of the Commanders in general, and that's like probably being counted against them, those two guys, too much because I think the looks are going to be there regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just a wait and see situation. But the last guy we probably should really hit on would be James Conner. This is like the last person in all of fantasy football that my team would want to roster. Aging running back on a bad
Truly,
team.
truly the last guy.
Yeah, aging running back on a bad team, and you don't feel great about his career outlook going forward. And he's only kind of valued because he has this situation how it is right now. Nobody thinks James Conner is any like special runner. It's just that hey, if they want to give him the ball 20 times, he's going to matter in fantasy. I think it can work out to start the season. Now with them cutting Colt McCoy, it's either Josh Dobbs or Clayton Tune are going to start it. Quarterback for the Cardinals, you're throwing the ball to 5'8" Hollywood Brown and Michael Wilson.
Mm.
Um, this defense just made a ton of cuts, traded Isaiah Simmons. I think the Cardinals are going to be maybe the worst team we've seen in a decade. Now, with that said, James Conner has kind of been a merchant for just like continuing getting carries and getting catches. He's somebody who's caught 35 passes every year of his career, 35 or more, I should say. He is really good at that. And he is kind of a do it all player. He had some really good games down the stretch last year because the Cardinals didn't have any really other options. I think part of that is like why Cliff Kingsbury is gone. He just mismanaged a lot of his players, a lot of the aging guys. Like J.J. Watt retired on his watch. DeAndre Hopkins demanded a trade. Like we have a new coaching staff. We have a new quarterback. We have the youngest team in the league who just doesn't really have a lot of talent in general. I don't see how James Conner fits into this at all. Keontae Ingram would be his backup. We've never seen really much from him either. He's just somebody I'm so worried about down the stretch of the season. He could be perfectly fine for 8, 9, 10 games. If the Cardinals are 3-12, like what good do they have trotting James Conner out there for 20 carries? I just don't see it.
Yeah, if they had a guy behind them that was like the heir apparent, was the no brainer, like who maybe even as a fifth round guy, but like just is probably going to take over that position later on, then I'd feel like a little more scared about James Conner. But I just don't see that right now on the roster. Like I think he's going to like one. James Conner is the type of guy you have to know who he is and what you're getting because you are getting a 1 year lease
Mhm.
and hoping he makes it through the season healthy. And if you're a contender, that's probably a really good situation for you as long as you don't have to give that much up. I think this is a bigger question than we can ask later in the podcast, but like, is Blake a contender? Right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he is. So then this makes sense to me. This, rostering James Conner if you're Blake makes sense to me because I do think he can be a solid flex option. I'm a little worried about like the Cardinals getting just dog walked week in, week out, and like how that impacts him. I think we could see plenty of games where he just goes out and has 6 fantasy points, and it's just like not pretty for the Cardinals in general, who score 6 points and just aren't having fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I have those worries, but like I think James Conner is going to have those games, and I witnessed it against Grant. Like we saw Grant and how he worked for Grant late in the season. Like it worked. So even if you're kind of gambling here, but that's what fantasy is. Like you're hoping that James Conner repeats some of that same magic into this year if you're Blake. And I'm sure. myself included, who I like to consider a contender, is like I would actively look at James Conner as a guy that I could not give up too much for, but could be on my roster as a guy who I can start maybe every other week or something like that.
Yeah, and I think for Blake's team that has two definite question marks at the top of his running back, just locking in those early season points from James Conner definitely makes some sense,
Yeah,
at least until we know kind of what we're getting from Javante and DeAndre Swift. So I think that move definitely makes sense. I think Blake's going to be okay at running back. I don't think he's got some breakout superstar unless Javante is just way healthier than we think. The end of Blake's bench here is Deontay Foreman, who's definitely going to have a role with the Bears, but he's definitely an injury away, I think, from mattering in fantasy.
sure.
Ezekiel Elliott was just signed. Maybe gets a goal line role for the Patriots, but I think it's hard to see a scenario in which he takes meaningful snaps from Ramondre Stevenson. Chuba Hubbard's behind Miles Sanders, but Chuba's also been nursing this ankle injury for what must be a month now. He still doesn't seem like he's 100%. Raheem Blackshear's there. Chuba, I don't think we've seen much from him in the NFL. He was second to last in the NFL in yards per carry. I just think he kind of sucks, but um, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
he's a
mean,
guy. He's a guy I just traded. I think Chuba, like if you had to start him in a pinch, it's fine, but like you don't love it at all. If you had to start him like once a season,
yeah,
you're very uncomfortable, but you'll do it if you have to. Looking at this roster, I don't. Chuba's never going to see the light of day. He's just kind of taken up a roster spot at this point, but yeah, he's one of those guys. If you had to, I guess you have to. But let's go back to Zeke for a minute because
yeah,
I know people were just looking for a reaction from me when he got signed by the Pats, right?
yeah.
But I think we have to be real with ourselves, and hope I'm not coming across as biased here, but like his career is over, right? Like it's not. He is a shell of what he once was, and he was awesome, but like he is truly a shell of what he once was. I mean, it, what would you consider a good season from Ezekiel Elliott this year?
700 yards and 7 touchdowns.
I mean,
Um,
if he has 700 yards, my mind will be truly blown, like truly blown.
yeah, because the thing is, even saying that kind of feels outrageous. The more I'm thinking about it, but last year he had I think 812 yards or something, but that's because he was the primary like lead back for the Cowboys until they finally smartened up. But um,
Great offense, one of the best O lines in the league. Like I don't, that is not the same situation.
no, it's not. And listen,
Yeah,
he is like the clear number two for the first time in his career. It's hard for me to see him mattering. Now he could
yeah.
have like I could definitely see a situation where you see a box score. Ezekiel Elliott has 8 carries for 23 yards and 2 touchdowns because he stole 2 at the goal line. Um, Now, what I will say about Zeke, he's always been a good pass catcher. He is a good pass protector. Uh, I just think the Patriots team in general, I mentioned this in another show, I don't think they're going to be very good. I think Zeke is going to always be there. He might take some snaps from Ramondre Stevenson, but as far as like fantasy points go, I don't think he really affects him all that much. Like, I don't think Ramondre's ceiling changes at all.
No, I think they were desperate, clearly desperate to get in a
Yes.
number two here. And
Yes.
I think only it's like, once again, I don't want to come across as biased here, but like they needed that guy. Like they don't want to run Ramondre into the ground, especially with this roster. It's just not good enough.
No, and they
So
mentioned they mentioned last year that we didn't want to play as Ramondre as much as we did. We just felt like we had to, and it made sense. Their only
yeah,
other two running backs were Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong. Now they just traded Pierre Strong away to the Browns a couple days ago. Kevin Harris is still there. I think Kevin Harris sucks. I mean, this is coming from a Gamecock fan. He was never good in
I think he
college.
sucks, and he's on my roster. So
The biggest
yeah,
thing with Kevin Harris is he's like a great receiver. Like he's always had amazing hands and stuff. So
sure.
I just don't think the Patriots are going to give him that opportunity because how does he play in passing situations? They like throwing it to Ramondre, and then Zeke is like perfect for the little dump off stuff and pass protection. Kevin Harris is 2 injuries away from mattering, probably. I mean, if Zeke gets hurt, like Kevin Harris would play, but I don't think he matters for fantasy. Um, you know,
Yeah,
I think Zeke is like a good own because, the kind of reverse contingency value if Ramondre gets hurt, like I hate to say it, but he's gonna have a role. Like this is what we're gonna do again.
yeah. I don't know if Zeke can run 700 yards straight right now, like much less run for that over the course of
Yeah.
the season. I just don't like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We don't need to spend too much time on him probably, but like
Yeah, yeah, we don't.
it's interesting to see him as Blake's like sixth highest valued running back. I definitely think
It's weird to see.
he's an interesting player to have stash though, I will say. Because there's a lot of ways this could break like we're looking at like flex option Zeke Elliott. I'd be sick watching that like week 14, like you're cheering for Zeke to score a goal line TD for the Patriots.
What a
Um,
world. Here's the thing, though, and Zeke was rostered by Zach for a while, and Zeke just belongs on Zach's roster. It just makes too much sense.
yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, Zach. His decisions have just blown my mind. Nothing he
Yeah,
does makes
well,
sense.
it's not Zach's podcast, so we'll keep moving.
No. So moving on to receivers here, and Blake ranks 10 out of 12th. That really just comes down to value because if you look at his team, he probably has, I don't know, 12 guys you could play
Sure.
on any given week. The biggest question here and why he is 10th out of 12 in value is when you look at his average age of receiver, it is 27 and a half years old, which is old
Woof.
for receivers. He just
Woof.
traded for Tyler Boyd today. He's gotten rid of George Pickens. This is a very old receiving core. And now, before I say anything bad, what I do want to say is he's got a lot of like win now players here at receiver. A lot of guys who, hey,
Yeah.
if they stay healthy, like this is actually kind of exciting receiving core. We just saw him move Devontae Adams today, but even looking at this now, he's got 4 pretty good starts every week at the top. Tyler Boyd is always there if you're desperate for a flex option, and then guys like Isaiah Hodgins and Zay Jones definitely could end up being like every week plays as we get into the season.
Blake, and looking at it even more now, has if you're a win now team, outside of Will, probably has like even probably over Will has the deepest team, right? Like there's just like you said, like I'm looking down the list. There's 8 guys here where I'd feel pretty confidently if I had to start them
Yeah.
that I'd feel okay. Now, Bryce, you looking at this roster, I bet you're rolling over in your grave because you're like, this roster is everything I'm against, right? Like it's old, it is win now, it is just like it is what it is, right? Like, and I think Blake knows that. I think, and we need to have a bigger conversation about Blake's vision and what he's wanting from this season because I don't think he knows. I think he said he just wants to have fun, which is cute and all, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what are we doing, right? So I think he wants to win, and the wide receiver group here is clear evidence that he's like, okay, I pretty much have to win this year.
I respect him for going for it, and he's actually done a pretty good job of putting together a win now receiving core. My
Yeah, I
question
agree.
is, which feel free to think about this yourself, but like, how do you get out of this situation? If you said, "Hey, I need to get younger," like, what kind of moves do you have left? This is kind of
Yeah,
last year we expect much from Keenan Allen. Michael Pittman has got a new quarterback. We're not sure who can complete 50% of his passes. Now, maybe Anthony Richardson is good and proves everybody, good as a thrower, I should say. We know he's a great athlete, but how valuable is Michael Pittman really? Calvin Ridley's coming back from gambling. Like, where is he at? I know the Twitter camp stuff looks great, but like, I need to see it on the football
yeah,
field.
sure.
And Brandon Cooks just switched teams. He's on his 5th team in 6 years. So like,
And he's like 45.
he's 29. He's still only 29.
Surely not.
No, he's still only 29. Yeah.
Okay,
Shocking.
I could have swore he was like I could have swore he was like 31.
How many
But
guys? How many guys playing for their 6th team are still under 30 years old? Like,
yeah, that's
it's
impressive,
crazy.
and it's not. It doesn't look great either. But yeah, Calvin Ridley. Like one, let's look at this again as I'm looking at
Yeah.
analyzing this roster. This roster is a gamble, is it not? Like no pun intended. Talking about Calvin Ridley.
Calvin
but, like,
Ridley is the Blake player. Like, that is Blake
he is
in a
the Blake
nutshell.
player,
Yeah.
but like so is Javonte, so is DeAndre Swift, like so is Calvin Ridley. Like they all could be awesome. Like they
Yes.
all could truly be great,
They could.
and they all could truly be like, you know, like not good at all either. Like so it's fun. Like if you're Blake, like buckle up for this season because it is going to be so interesting. And like as I'm looking at this more, I'm like honestly very excited to look at Blake's team this year because there's so many guys on here where I'm like, what is Keenan Allen going to do this season? Like, is he going to keep doing this, or is he going to is Father Time going to catch him? But like Calvin Ridley's really exciting to look at. I don't have too much to say about Calvin because he's a stud clearly who got caught gambling. It's a really difficult situation, but I kind of hope he can be good, right? Like I think he can be, I think wide receiver one or is aggressive. But I think he can be a top 15 guy. So we'll see.
Yeah, as far as this season goes, I mean, Calvin Ridley, I don't know how much you keep up with redraft fantasy football or some of the best ball stuff, but Calvin Ridley
Yeah,
goes at like the 2-3 turn. I mean, people are expecting
really
a
early.
monster
Yeah,
season from this guy. And I get it, right? Like he's in this perfect
perfect
situation.
situation.
Everyone's excited about the Jaguars as they should be. I mean, I am as well. I'm not trying to say I'm not. The one thing I'll say is Calvin Ridley has one career 1,000-yard season, and he is, 29 years old. I know he's missed 2 seasons because of gambling, but like we saw him do it one time. Like pump the
Yeah,
brakes slightly, please.
yeah.
I'm excited about him. I think he's the perfect guy to like take a gamble on though. So this does fit Blake because if it works
Fits
out,
Blake
man,
so
it could
well.
really work out. Um, I like Michael Pittman. However, I don't know if a Colts receiver is going to crack the top 40 in fantasy this year. Like any of these guys. I mean, Anthony Richards is going to take all the goal line stuff. Jonathan Taylor's going to take, I mean, if he's still on the team, I guess that's another conversation. But um, I don't know how to feel
Yeah.
about Michael Pittman. He's been very productive his first couple years in the league, but um, what kind of ceiling does it look like in this offense right now? I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to say one last thing about Calvin
Yeah,
Ridley,
yeah, go ahead.
and because I want to be positive here. Calvin Ridley's absolutely the guy that I would want on my roster because I think he's just super exciting, super fun, and has that like potential and upside to be something really special. Um, Michael Pittman, kind of like you were talking about, like I would rather roll over in my grave or die than consistently be starting a Colts receiver this season. Like there is in no
I'm
world where
so
I would feel
excited
good
to
about.
start Alec Pierce.
Yeah, the White Lightning. Like I'm sure you feel just incredible about that. But like even Michael Pittman, who is without a doubt a very talented guy, right? Like he's a good receiver.
Yep.
I just don't know. I am just so worried that any of these guys like do any of them have 1,000 yards receiving? I don't know. I think, like you said, do any of them finish in the top 40? I would be pretty surprised if they did.
Now, I should say, I think Michael Pittman can do it. If they give Anthony Richardson some good stuff. Look, I mean, he's made a ton of good throws in the preseason. Alec Pierce has dropped 2 touchdowns in preseason, or we'd be having a different conversation probably, or at least the general like sentiment around Anthony Richardson would be different.
Sure.
But the reality is like he's totally unproven. This guy is he's going to play his entire rookie season at 21 years old. He has less experience than Trey Lance had, like coming out, and we all talk about how Trey Lance like never had any experience. At least the Colts are giving him the
Woof.
opportunity here. Um,
Yeah.
we'll see how this turns out with him, but like again, owning anybody who's attached to Anthony Richardson at this current point is just a total wait and see moment. I think that's why you see Michael Pittman ranked where he is in the wide receiver rankings and keep trade cut. People think he's good, but it's like hard to get excited about him.
Yeah. What is he? He's currently wide receiver 30. So,
Yeah,
or yeah,
31.
31.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? I'm worried. If your name isn't Jonathan Taylor, who may not even be on the roster, like I wouldn't want to start any of those guys week in, week out, just because I don't feel good about the quarterback situation. I think Anthony Richardson has the talent. Like I think mentioning him and Trey Lance in the same sentence is insulting because I think he's just got more
Yeah.
just infinitely more talent. But I'm like I don't really care about the Colts. So I could take them or leave them, but like I think it would be fun if Anthony Richardson had an exciting rookie season, and Michael Pittman would be the number one beneficiary of that. So
Yeah, and the kind of the reason I was willing to take a shot on Anthony Richardson is like if you look at the top 6 quarterbacks in the NFL, I mean, I think 5 of them are like what we saw as the total project, and it kind of works out.
yeah,
Like there's a reason Pat Mahomes was the 11th overall pick, right? Like he wasn't some sure thing. Josh Allen, everyone heard all those concerns. Like Jalen Hurts was a second rounder because no one thought he could throw at the NFL level. Um, Lamar Jackson, like everyone knows those stories. Like I think Anthony could
Sure.
figure it out. He's definitely got the shot to do it. I'll just bet on the athleticism with him. But like all these guys as rookie passers have like not led their receivers to what you would be looking for. And again, for a team that's trying to win, Michael Pittman's like a terrifying own for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
yeah, we can move on to Keenan Allen. We know he's great. Just how much does he have left? I guess is the only thing
right.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, Keenan Allen and James Conner, or I'm sorry, Keenan Allen and Brandon Cooks fall exactly under the same umbrella as James Conner, right? Where it's
Mhm.
like, all right, this is if you have those three guys on your roster, you are trying to win this season, and if you're not, you're doing something drastically wrong.
Yep.
So Blake, this is my advice to you. If you're going to take it or leave it, but like you are in win now mode. This roster is built to win now. It's not built to be sustainable in the future. I think you know that. I hope you know that. But like those three guys in particular are like the biggest marker of a team trying to win this season.
Yes. Yes. And look, the Chargers drafted Quentin Johnson. Josh Palmer is still there. Keenan Allen has been relatively healthy for his career. I know he missed a little bit of time last year, but he's been very healthy. He's very good at what he does, being that short intermediate route runner kind of guy. Never been a huge touchdown upside type of player, but we know what he's capable of. Now, I, as it sits here today, I think Blake would plan on starting Keenan Allen as his wide receiver too, because I think Pittman is more of the
As he
flex
should.
option. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's perfectly fine. But again, with Blake's receiving core and how deep this kind of goes, it's just like playable guys. Like if you could package Keenan Allen and something else and just go get one more like receiver you feel good about, maybe a little younger, that would be
Yeah.
my suggestion here. Just to limit the disaster kind of potential, but
Yeah.
um,
The disaster potential is there, but I don't think Blake would want it any other way, honestly. So, but yeah,
yep, yep, living on the edge.
The Chargers, yeah, truly, the Chargers wide receiver room is pretty crowded, but like Keenan Allen is just
Yep,
until proven otherwise the guy
yep,
there.
yep.
So I think he's going to have another great year, and he's just um, I think we've seen no signs of regression, right? Like he's still playing at a very high level. He may not. I mean, we've seen a little regression signs, but like he's still putting up numbers. He's still the viable wide receiver two option. So, for Blake in the win now mode, like I think he's a great roster.
Yes, and Keenan Allen is just another one of these guys who deserves to always be on a win now team.
Yeah,
If you're trading him, you're trading to another team who's trying to win. So just always keep that in mind. Brandon Cooks kind of the same way. I mean, we don't need to touch on Brandon Cooks, but he steps into this Cowboys offense as the number 2 now. He's definitely going to have a good opportunity here. We saw him have some good games with the Texans last year, but he was the number 1 and just a disaster of a team situation. Heading over to Dallas, I think it actually could work out well for him. He's somebody the best ball community really likes as like a mid to later round pick. Um, and we know he can still do it. Like Brandon Cooks has always been good at what he does. Even being a tiny guy, he's great at contested catches and down the field stuff. Week to week basis in like a managed league, I think it is kind of tough just because you never know when he's going to have that 50-yard catch. Maybe Blake can figure it out.
Brandon Cooks is like the typical. Blake is just maybe he's a whisperer, and he's an oracle, and we just have no idea. He probably would have proved that to us by now. What are we on year 8 or 9 of this league? But maybe it's about to come out. I don't know. But Brandon Cooks is like the classic guy that you like pull up your FanDuel on a Sunday afternoon. It's just like shit. Brandon Cooks had what? Like he had what? Like 5 receptions for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and it's just like okay.
Yep.
So he's got that, right? And like, I'll be very curious to see how he fits in on this Cowboys roster, but like, it's a much better situation than when he was previously in. So I'm expecting a pretty good season from Brandon Cooks.
Yep, I'm with you. And then he got Tyler Boyd today, another one of these guys who he's just plugging along until the Bengals shut the lights out on him or his key card stops
Yeah.
working. We know what he's going to do. We know what role he's going to play. I know I've talked up Andre Iosivas a ton, but he's not really a threat to what Tyler Boyd does right now. Tyler Boyd's going to be out there. Obviously, the Bengals are a Super Bowl contender, and they're just hoping they get the best out of him again. If one of these Bengals guys get hurt, you have the weekly wide receiver 2 upside from Tyler Boyd as well. Definitely a good guy to own if you're trying to win games. I don't. I almost never see a situation you'd be wanting to play him if both Jamar and T Higgins are healthy. But what do I know?
Yeah, Tyler Boyd is a great just insurance guy where it's one of those two guys go down, you feel really good about it. I also think like Tyler Boyd, like I don't think either of us think he's going to be on the roster next year. I don't
Yeah,
think he'll be a Bengal next year,
no,
right? So
almost no shot.
um, I like rostering him, and I think it could work out, right? If he lands on a team next year, that is a much better situation where he's getting some run. Like, what if he's a Patriot next year, or just where he can go in and be a guy who's like, not saying he's wide receiver 1 quality or should be on any NFL team, but like even if he's a number 2, like his stock kind of goes up quite a bit in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I like rostering Tyler Boyd. I think he's a pretty solid player.
Yeah, and that's kind of the bigger part of that Bengals discussion is just knowing they have to pay Burrow
Yeah.
and pay Chase. Where does it leave all these other guys? And look, I know that's a discussion for probably a different day, but I would be shocked if Tyler Boyd is still on the Bengals this time next year.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, Isaiah Hodgins and Zay Jones are here. And Isaiah Hodgins, I believe these were both traded from you, correct?
Yeah.
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 Now
Both two men city mongers.
we saw Isaiah Hodgins have some really huge games down the stretch and really look like a pretty good NFL receiver. Now the Giants have definitely done some stuff to address the rest of that receiving core. Darren Waller comes over to play some tight end. Isaiah Hodgins is going to be on this team and going to be out there. How good is he really, or was it just like a flash in the pan situational what he did last year?
Yeah. You said, the Giants have done things to address their wide receiving core, and if you're Xander, you surely hope they have. But I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't really think they have. Like, obviously, I think Darren Waller is going to get a lot of targets, but like, if we're talking wide receivers, like Isaiah Hodgins is in a really good situation that I think, if we see any bump up in touchdowns thrown by Daniel Jones, Isaiah Hodgins seems like the guy that's going to benefit from that. I think he's a really good player, and I think he can be like your third flex option if you need it. Like, that's how good of a season I think Isaiah Hodgins could potentially have.
Yeah, and for the first time in a while, we actually see like Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard healthy. Um, I think we'll have to wait and see how much that like affects his playing time. He's never been a special teamer, so like if he's on the roster, like it's to play in the games and
He's
catch
playing
passes.
wide
So
receiver. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think he's going to have a chance here, and he definitely could be one of these guys you look up at and be like, why did we value Isaiah Hodgins so low? He clearly showed us what he can do. Or is he another Travis Fulgham, everyone's former Eagle from a few years ago, who blew up for 2 games and then disappeared into the nether? So
Travis Fulgham was not on my bingo card of names I thought I'd hear on this podcast tonight, but here we are.
yeah, great little player out of Old Dominion.
Well,
Zay Jones, your favorite player. I'll let you take the reins here. Tell the people what they need to know about Zay Jones.
Zay Jones is a star. Like, if his situation were any better, like I would not have traded him. Like, if he did not have like 3 or 4 really good receivers in front of him, he's a good player. Like, I don't understand the hate. Like, he won me so many football games last year, and he's just a guy that like him and Trevor like have some connection, right? Like, he loves throwing to him in the end zone. Like, he would have games. He had multiple games with 3 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns, and he's just, I don't know. He's one of those guys. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense to roster him if you have Calvin Ridley, who, God forbid something happened to Calvin Ridley, it makes sense. Like, it's good insurance. But like, I think Zay Jones, I think he's a good player, and I think he is one of those guys that just any week could have, 75 yards and 2 touchdowns, and just no one would be that shocked.
No, he definitely proved he's a very good NFL player last season. And like you said, I think the biggest key for Zay Jones here, or at least for Blake, is that, listen, you got 2 Jaguars guys. We saw with the Chiefs, too. I mean, just get pieces attached to these good offenses, and they're going to have their fantasy weeks. And you always have that option if somebody gets hurt. Again, like if Zay Jones was to get hurt, well, Calvin Ridley's not going to leave the field now. So, like, you can feel great about him every week. And if Calvin Ridley does get hurt, well, you don't lose production because Zay's going to be able to step in and do just fine. So Blake's done very well to kind of assemble that. Again, like I just don't know how long he keeps these guys. Everyone's asking him for trades, and I think some of these wide receiver needy teams are going to look at Blake's roster on here and go, "Wow, I didn't realize he had 8 or 9 startable players.
Yeah.
Let me go make him an offer."
Oh, and Greg Dortch was a Mid City monger as well. So,
Yeah,
classic
yeah.
guy.
Greg
Love
Dortch
him.
was my
Just unfortunately, he's the wide receiver 3 on the Cardinals. So it's pretty much just like woof. You don't want him.
And the crazy part is like Greg Dortch is going to play a ton for the Cardinals
Yeah,
this
and
year.
I think he's a good player. I
Yeah.
just think his situation is absolute hot garbage. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we don't have to spend time on the rest of these guys. The last guy I just want to quickly say a word about would be Josh Reynolds, who, while Jamison Williams is out, Josh Reynolds is going to be out there and have some opportunity. So if the situation presents itself, Josh Reynolds could be a usable fantasy asset for sure.
Yeah, I think Josh Reynolds and like Chuba Hubbard are probably on equal ground. You might scoff at that, but like on this roster, like I don't think either of them see the light of day. But I think if you had to, you could play them in a bind.
Yeah. I think as far as like summing up the receiver and running back room for Blake here, I think the biggest thing for me would be like if you could just package some of these like okay startable guys just to improve slightly. Get one more guy you feel pretty good at, feel good about at receiver. So you don't have to play Michael Pittman every week. I know like Michael Pittman's a name that everybody knows at this point, but like my goodness, like how many times are we going to see a 3 for 35 this year? Um,
Could be a lot.
yeah, and look, you look at teams like Zach who have no wide receiver depth. I think Blake, you can make a deal there with him. Could you package Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, and Zach Ertz and go get Debo? I don't know. Zach's been looking. He's been tossing
No,
Debo
because he's
around.
on Zach's roster, so it's not happening. But like,
Zach will make
I
some
get what you mean.
deals. My big prediction is Zach is going to make some deals as the season starts.
Okay, I hope I'm proven wrong.
He's been tossing some stuff out lately. He's just been a little too afraid to make moves preseason. But now, as the season begins, I definitely could see him making something happen. Especially if Zach starts like 0-2 this year, he's blowing this thing up. You'll be getting Josh Jacobs for free at that point.
Yeah. Move and not because some of these guys are just in roster hell on his team. Like they're
Yeah.
just not going to play on his team because there's just too many of them. And that doesn't mean they're not good players. They're just not going to be effective or useful on his team. So I think there's like overall, like Michael Pittman's the guy like who in a dynasty perspective is a really valuable asset in my opinion because I don't think
Mm-hmm.
this year is going to be anything special. But if you're trading him to a team that has a win now asset that's not in win now mode, flopping those two guys seems like a really smart deal.
Yeah, if you want Dallas Goedert, Blake, you know who to call. Um,
I don't think he does looking at this tight end situation now, but
yeah, Blake, we went back and forth for 2.5 weeks about a Dallas Goedert trade. It was a Dallas Goedert and Antonio Gibson for George Pickens plus. We could just never figure out the plus.
yeah.
We could never get into agreement. I finally came.
Blake is the king of plus. He's like, and what? What else do I get?
Yeah, yep. I love Blake's texting Blake for deals. You just never know if today's the day you're going to get him to say yes, but he's always
It's
willing
crack.
to hear you out.
It's better than crack. Yeah, and that's why people do it, and he loves it. Like, there's nothing better. Blake is the heartbeat of the league in terms of trading, and kind of everything flows through Blake. Like, I would love to see the percentage breakdown of roster of like guys rostered that Blake has had on his team because it has to be outside of. It's just astronomical.
But the crazy thing is he's traded these guys and traded back for them all so many times. I mean, TJ Hawkinson has spent, I think, 3 or 4 stints on Blake's roster without even playing a game.
He's never played a game.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah. But
and I think TJ Hawkinson is really, really good too. Like I don't we're like why are we trading away the third best tight end in the league like this? We need to stop. He's a valuable asset, guys. Come on.
Yeah, and so TJ Hawkinson, like, look, I mean, he's tight end 4 in Dynasty. He was overall tight end 3 in points per game last year. Huge year when he came over from the Lions to the Vikings. I think the only real questions around him would just be, does Jordan Addison take up a bunch of the targets that he was getting? I think it's possible, but I do think Hawkinson's still going to be involved. He did a lot of good stuff at the goal line too for them. again, like I mentioned earlier, I think the Vikings are going to be in a lot of shootouts here.
Yeah. They're going to pass the ball a lot. Like, I don't, Alexander Madison, I think he's a fine player, but like, he's not Dalvin Cook, right? Like, and then they also don't
He's
have a backup now that's Alexander Madison. That's not just how it works, right?
yeah.
So, like, they are going to throw the ball so much this season. And I think all three of those guys are like, I don't think Jordan Addison's really going to impact TJ Hawkinson. I think TJ Hawkinson can still get 10 receptions a game. Like, I don't think that's crazy.
Well, in games where Kirk throws 35, 40 times, all these guys are going to get theirs. Obviously,
Yeah,
Jefferson's going to. I mean, I'd be almost surprised at this point if he doesn't lead the league in targets, barring injury.
sure.
And then Addison, who I'm not sure how I feel about him as a prospect, but my goodness, this situation couldn't be. I mean, this is the dream situation for him right now. And then TJ Hawkinson's going to be there and collecting. Like, all we need from these tight ends is like 6 catches for 65 yards. Hope he falls in the end zone. And he's going to do plenty of that this year.
Yeah, because no offense to the rest of the Vikings roster, who is a skill position player, like I think outside of those three guys, and we'll throw Madison in there too. Outside of those four guys, the talent kind of drops off a cliff,
Yep.
right? So, like KJ Osborne and Jalen Naylor, bless their hearts, but like they're just not going to do it. They're not going to move the needle. So,
Yeah, they're fine.
I think
bench guys.
they're fine.
They
like
don't
they're
matter.
fine,
Yeah,
but
they have
yeah,
no
they don't
relevance.
matter.
Yeah.
So those four guys are going to eat this offseason if the Vikings are any good. And even if they're not good, like I think they are going to be good, but like they're still going to put up points. And just because of that defense, they're going to be on the field a lot. So
Yeah, and TJ Hawkinson's somebody I think is hard for people to value because it's like, look, like we saw him have his tight end 3 season. If I'm paying for a tight end, do I want to go pay up for the Kelsey or the Mark Andrews types or the Kyle Pitts types? Or do I stay with this Hawkinson Goddard tier where it's like we know they're good, but for how long? One thing I'll remind people, TJ Hawkinson just now turned 26. I mean, this guy is still so young, and tight ends play a long time.
yeah,
You could be looking at another decade of this guy like mattering in fantasy. I think he's a great player to own. I think Blake did well here to get him. He's definitely going to get a ton of points at tight end. His backup is the one I'm kind of really intrigued by, Mr. Michael Mayer.
mm-hmm. Yeah, Michael. I always want to say Michael Myers, but yeah, I think I like Michael as a prospect, right? But yeah, I think I have once again concerns about Vegas's offense and the team in general. Like, but he's the guy. Like, he's stepping in day one, and it's like this is his job.
Yep.
So, we'll see, right? But I don't think like could he have a season with 45, 50 receptions and just being a solid backup tight end? I think that's absolutely what's going to happen. I think he's like of the rookies. I think he's one of the safer guys.
He is definitely safe, and he's definitely somebody whose situation probably looks a lot different next year. And we could be sitting here very excited about Michael Mayer heading into year
Yeah.
2. Perfect guy to have as a backup tight end on your roster. Blake also, I should say, understands Michael Mayer's value because I have pestered the hell out of this dude trying to get Michael Mayer, and he refuses. He's
As he
demanding.
should.
He's demanding
Yeah.
a first round pick for Michael Mayer. He gets it. So Blake's done well there. I think if anyone else is trying to trade for Michael Mayer, you're going to run to the same brick wall that I did. But I think for Blake, perfect guy to own. Trade Hawkinson in the offseason, kind of reset from there. I think that would probably be his plan if I had to guess. But Blake's done well here. I think looking overall at this team, though, like he definitely has enough to win games. He's going to win games this season. And look, if some of these gambles pay off, you could be looking at a top 4 team here, and I would not be all that surprised.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've got a few more comments about the tight end room before we transition to big picture. I think, and this is going to be kind of like an idiot brain take, but I'm going to say it because I think other people think like this. It's not just me. There are a lot of, this was a great tight end year in the draft, right? We had, I don't know, probably 5, 6, 7 guys where it's like, I feel really confident about rostering them right now.
Yep.
Now, obviously not all of them are going to do or pan out, right? That's just not going to happen. It's never how it works. So, if you're Blake, you're just praying that he's one of those 2, 3 guys that's like what were we doing? Like, why did he fall to the mid-second round? Like, what were we doing this whole time? Like, you're hoping he's that guy because he does fit the just conventional tight end mold of the NFL. So,
Yes, and he was always praised at Notre Dame for his run blocking, and that's the kind of stuff that
yeah,
keeps you on the field, especially for a team
yeah,
with Josh
absolutely.
Jacobs. That stuff is going to matter to the Raiders. So definitely feel great
And I
about
have
that.
one hot take. I have one hot take here. I think TJ Hawkinson, I'd rather have him on my roster this year than Kyle Pitts.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
I just think it's far better a situation. And like I'm a Drake London owner, and I'm just worried about Desmond Ritter. Like I'm praying he has a good season, but like I would just feel much better with if you put Kyle Pitts in the Vikings offense. Obviously, I'm not saying this, but like I think T.J. Hawkinson is that good of a player, and I think it's that much better of a situation. And I would rather have him if you're a win now team.
Yes, yes, and for somebody who is valued, I shouldn't say significantly, but is cheaper overall in Dynasty, Hawkinson is somebody I feel really like really good
Yeah,
about him for these next coming years.
Blake, please keep him just for this year. Just please keep him. Do not move him. Okay,
Yeah, just
that
if you're
just keep him.
and look, if you're going to sell him just to anybody but Zach, that would really mean a lot to me as I have Zach's pick.
Yes.
But yeah, I'll toss out a hot take here as well. I'm going to say Calvin Ridley finishes with a top 8 fantasy season at wide receiver. Um, Points per game. We saw Christian Kirk like at this number the entire season last year. If Ridley kind of
Yeah.
becomes the guy, my goodness, I think the Jags are. The Jags could be top 3 in points scored this year. Just looking at that roster and that division, they are going to just mutilate some of these AFC South teams. Calvin Ridley's top 8 fantasy season. That's my prediction.
Okay. I love it. I don't agree, but like I'm not going to knock it. So,
So big picture here. Where do you think Blake falls amongst all of these other teams in grit?
um,
I'll pull this back up to the running backs too.
yeah, it's a difficult situation, like question. I think, like for this year, I think he's a top 5 team. If things go right, I think he could be top. This one is more than any team is like we have several teams where it's like okay they're going to be up here and then other teams that are going to be there are going to be down here.
Mm-hmm.
Blake is a massive question mark and I think he loves that. um, this one I think of all the teams in grit, Blake's team is the hardest team to like pinpoint right now beginning of the season where he's going to end up at the end of the season just because of all these guys, right? Like his potential 3 of his 4 best players are maybe the biggest question marks in football.
Huh.
Like
Yeah.
honestly, like they're just huge gambles. Now, I think those gambles could really work out, and if they do, I think he's a top 4 roster. And if you're a top 4 roster, you can win. Like period. I don't. I think we always you and Cap come on here and are always like, and this is once again, this might be my bias showing, but like if you were a top 4 roster or a top 5 roster, or even just make the playoffs, Grant proved this last year, you can win, right? That's all you have to do, and is have the roster at the beginning of the season to win some games, and then hope your team gets hot late. Like Will could have the best team of all time, and he is a juggernaut, right? But like
Mhm.
that team even could get cold, right? Like it just happens. So like this Blake's team is a team that seems like could get hot late, make the playoffs and get hot late. So yeah, I think he's in a good spot if those gambles pay off.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be misconstrued, kind of like what I mean by that. But being a win now team is basically just saying like my plan is to make the playoffs. Because the whole point, look, if I get in the playoffs, I am 3 games from winning everything. And if your
That's
team
it.
is good enough to get to the playoffs in Dynasty, that means you're going to have a pretty damn good roster. Sure, like you might look on paper and think like Will has a better team or you have a better team than somebody, but it all comes down to 1 week. I mean, there's always bad matchups. Your receiver is playing at the 49ers, and then his running back is home against the Cardinals. Like, this
Yeah.
is how this stuff goes. So just getting into the playoffs and just let the luck fall how it does. It
Yeah.
definitely could happen. I will say though, if Blake just sits on his hands, just at least Blake, give me 10 days. Let the season
It's
start.
not it's not gonna happen. Like it's his drug. Like
It is, but like if he could just get to the regular season, play that first week, and just see what happens,
yeah.
I think he will be in a good position.
I think what's more realistic is if we say like, if you can, Blake, if you can go the next 10 days till the season starts without trading Josh Allen, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, Calvin Ridley, and
Hawkinson.
like Keenan Allen and Hawkinson, like just do whatever else, but like don't trade those like 5-6
Yeah.
guys, because I think you have a really good core there. If the
He
gambit
has
pays
a
off.
deep team. He might have the deepest team in grit.
Yes, I
Yes.
agree, absolutely. Like look at the running backs. Like, I mean,
Eight of
I
them you feel
would die
good
for that
starting on
depth. Yeah,
situations, and then receiver he's got 8 or 9 you feel good about starting on situations.
yeah,
And look, if Hawkinson gets hurt, maybe Michael Mayer could give you some good games. Like I don't know. I mean, he's
yeah.
got a deep team.
Blake is unfortunately just one of those guys, more so than anyone, where it's like he gets caught sleeping, he'll drink some melatonin or something happens, he gets bored at work on a 9-hour drive to Tampa, and he's like, well, I just wanted to make a move to have some fun. And like it sets his roster back months or years. And it's like, Blake, you have right now, you have done a great job. And honestly, I'm a little surprised that it's worked out this well, just given the amount of moves you've made, which what seemed like not too much vision was there, but like now maybe the vision is like he's truly in win now mode. That's been the vision the whole time, and we just haven't seen it. But like right now, if you're in win now mode, you're kind of at a finished product, as in like talking about the core of your team.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could add one more like really good receiver, trading away some depth. But like, please sit on your hands. Just I know it's hard, but like just sit on your hands for a couple weeks and see what happens, because I think you have a really fun, exciting team here. That's like I would if I were betting on this, I would bet that they would make the playoffs.
I'm going to say my record prediction for Blake is going to be 8-6, because I think he's going to win enough early to not do any stupid trades. Because if you look at his schedule, I think he's got some winnable games to start the season. I believe he plays me twice this year. How the schedule shakes out, there's 2 free wins.
You're the Cardinals of grit.
I'm the Syracuse Orange of grit, and I'm playing NFL teams. Yeah. But I think so. Blake will play me twice. I think he's got a shot to win 8 games. And I'm thinking if he wins early, he's not going to do any stupid trades. I'm worried, though, that Blake starts like 2-3 and then realizes I don't want Keenan Allen now and sells him to Jonah or somebody else who's trying to win. And this gets kind of out of hand.
So
yeah.
Blake, because he's made this many moves, right? He's got such a disposable roster. Like none of these guys are safe. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you go to my team, like obviously I'm a little different, but like I've got guys I'm not trading. Will has guys
too.
he is not trading.
I have guys I will
You've
never
got guys,
sell.
you've got picks you are not trading. Like Cap, go on the like no one is safe on Blake's team. Not a soul. And like if this were real life, like players would be showing up to, like with their bags packed. Like that's in just Blake, sit on your hands for a little while, bud. Like you can do it, but it's challenging because these guys are disposable, but they are good. Like, and they've been traded and moved around so many times for a reason.
So I know Blake acquired Hawkinson today, but if somebody sends Blake a text and says, "Hey, what's the price of Hawkinson?" He's going to give you a legitimate price tag. If somebody comes to me and offers me 2 firsts for Jahan Dotson, like I don't even answer the text. Like I need to see it first. So
he's your guy.
Yeah. But look, I like what Blake has done. He's won a lot of trades too, and I think he set himself up like fairly decently. I believe, actually, before we get off here, let me scroll and see this. Yeah, he has his own 2025 first. He got that back in the trade from me, and he also got, I think he's, unless he traded it today. Yeah. So he has my second rounder in 2024. Yeah. So look, that's going to be the 13th pick in the draft. Blake actually has a chance to get some young guys on his team. So I would not be afraid of like moving some of these end of bench guys, or maybe even a 3rd round pick, or just trying to package some stuff together. He's going to have a good bit of value here. I actually think Blake's done pretty good to set himself up. I just need him to stop and let the season start before I start panicking for him.
Yeah, I know, right?
Because God, this team with Devontae Adams was so exciting, man. I don't know why.
I know. Yeah, I wish, but like it is tough. Blake is probably the last team we should have assessed, just because it's like, all right, here's his team now the season starts. Okay, so I have been texting Blake over the last 2 minutes just to see. I said, "What's the price tag for Hawkinson?" He goes, "Not sure. Make an offer." I said, "Would you trade him?" He goes, "I mean, I will trade anybody. I will trade anybody." Look at that.
That might be the thumbnail right there. I might clip that.
Put that on the
Clip
thumbnail.
it
Yeah,
in.
clip that.
Yeah.
Like, it's perfect. I mean, stop, Blake. Stop. Okay, I'm done with my TED talk. Sit on your hands. Delete the app maybe for a week and a half. That's like the best advice I can
Hey,
give you, Blake.
ask Zach.
But
Zach's
you
got all
know,
the tricks for not looking at his phone.
yeah, Zach has every skill in the book to figure out. Okay, well, I don't want to trade this player. Like maybe Zach feels like he went to, I don't know, someone's barbecue or is best friends with their kids or something on his roster. I don't know, but yeah,
I do think though that Blake, of all the teams who have not won in the Grit League, you are the most likely to win next with your team. I think Blake is second here. Um, I like his
without
team
a
better
doubt,
than Zach's. I like his team better than
for sure.
Xander's. We haven't talked about Alec's team yet. Alec has a lot of
Yeah,
exciting pieces, but the lack of moves has really made his team a little worse in the offseason. Alec does have a ton of picks, though, so I don't think his whole
yeah.
plan is to win in 2023. But I think if Blake makes some good moves here, he's going to have a real shot. And I hope people start taking him seriously. Maybe they'll do that if he doesn't make a move for about 48 hours.
Because that it's an this is the last thing I'm going to say. It also affects his credibility. Like doing that, having that mantra and mentality of like, oh, I'll trade anyone. I'm just here for fun, which I get. We're all here for fun, but like it does hurt. Like it's like, okay, well, you know, I think Blake has a very serious roster right now, and I think if he just sits on it, I think people will start taking him and the roster and the team a little more seriously as well.
Yeah, and probably by the time this is published, he'll have Devontae Adams back. But on that
Yeah,
note, Austin, any final words?
Blake, if you stop trading now, it looks calculated, right? Like you've got a good team. It seems like you had a master plan this whole time. If you continue to trade, it looks, the opposite of that. So just you're in a good spot. You've conducted and made a playoff team here out of crap, right? So stick with it. Delete the app, text Zach, figure out what to do. But I think everyone, Blake, you're a fan favorite. Everyone's rooting for you, right? Like people want to see Blake in the playoffs. That's always exciting. So do what you got to do to get there.
Yeah, and last thing for me, I was going to say thank you everybody for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Next, I will be doing Xander's team breakdown with Jacob tomorrow. Might try to knock out Alex too while we're there, and then that will just leave me and Jacob's team reviews. I'm going to invite our friend Austin to join us for that because I think we're going to have a lot of bag defending and absolute homer takes, but those will be fun
Yeah.
shows I think to get done.
All right. Happy to fill in. Thanks.
All right, thanks guys, and stop. Oh,
Is it still on? It says record.
it's stopping, so I can just edit it at the end.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right. Well, good pod.
yeah, fun discussion there. I think that'll get some conversation.